Starting. Okay, yeah, so mics are unmuted and we're up to episode 149, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. So today's been a bit of an interesting one because my producer didn't rock up. So
Put
I've
him on
had to
blast
train
straight away.
Sorry?
Putting him on blast just immediately.
That's it, yeah. I'm putting it, yeah, under the firing line. Nah, it's all right. He's probably had a very valid reason. This is the first time in 149 episodes that this has happened. So, oh, I forgot to say as well, we were to share the video during the countdown. We've just been so flat out. It's all right.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
so tonight I've got Matilda on.
Hi.
And so Matilda is a theatrical. What did you put on your
I
invoice?
was like a theatre technician.
Theatre
That's what I
technician.
put on my tax return anyway.
Yeah.
It can get a bit convoluted sometimes. But yeah, theatre technician covers it.
And so as a theatre technician, so what's it like being a theatre technician?
It's pretty good. It's pretty chaotic sometimes, but
What is a theatre technician though?
well, it's pretty broad. That's what I put on my tax return for the government to understand. But more specifically, I've been a lighting technician for most of my career. So I've been responsible for helping the lighting team in put on major commercial musical theatre productions.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of large scale lights, sound, dancing, costumes, singing, that kind of a thing.
Because you're originally from Sydney, right?
Yes.
And so you're only over here for 3 months, and then you're off to where again?
Brisbane. So
off
yeah.
to Brisbane for 3 months. So you're just traveling Australia. Like,
Yeah, so almost at the end of our Perth leg of the tour of Moulin Rouge, the musical. Yeah.
So you're over here. That's amazing for Moulin Rouge. That's like you literally just get to travel the country, like.
Yeah, travel and work.
And work.
Most of the days. But yeah.
The thing is, you're here for 3 weeks, though. Like,
3 months.
Oh, 3
3
months.
months.
Yeah, 3 months.
We're here for about 2 weeks more. So we're just at the end. We've just had our third last week of being in Perth.
And
But yeah.
from talking to you the other day when we were quite tipsy, right? Like, have you been to Perth before?
I've been to Perth, but only when I was small. So
Yeah.
I came to visit my dad while he was doing a show here.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I didn't really remember much apart from the Swan River and the bikes.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so I haven't ever been here as an adult, let alone worked here. I've never been at the theatre here, so that's been cool.
Whilst your dad was doing a show here, so like, because we were talking about this prior, so it's a good way to dive into this now. So your family does theatrics, like.
Yeah, so I grew up kind of knowing that backstage theatre existed almost like before I knew onstage theatre existed because
wow.
both my parents worked on musicals in Sydney and they toured as well around, but they did a different role to me. My dad was a stage manager and then a resident director, and my mum is a French horn player.
French horn player.
Yeah, so they met when she was in the orchestra.
Can
and
we
he
Google
was
what a French horn is? I forgot what a French horn is.
It's kind of like a trombone, but all coiled up.
Ah, one of those big things.
Yeah.
By the way, thank you, Beth, for running the cameras for tonight.
Yeah, you were putting Mitch on blast, but you didn't talk about
Beth.
our beautiful
sorry
replacement.
about that, but
beautiful
yeah.
stand-in.
But Beth is doing the cameras tonight. So
Yeah, that's a French horn.
Thank the Lord she's here to be able to actually do this. So those things probably weigh quite a bit, though, right?
They're not too bad. They're not as big. They're not like a big tuba. Those are the really big ones.
Yeah.
But you can see to
Oh,
scale.
yeah.
It's just two hands.
So what? Your mum was a professional.
She is, yeah.
Yeah,
She's a
wow.
professional French horn player.
That's amazing.
So that's how my parents met. But yeah, so then I grew up, me and my sister grew up kind of, mum and dad would take turns doing shows and doing tours.
Yeah. Okay.
And whatever other parent was away on tour, we would go and visit them every now and again. So I got to see Perth that way.
But was it mainly Australia, or did you ever get to travel to Europe?
Mainly Australia, yeah. But I've also been to Singapore. Mum took Oliver there.
Oliver?
The show.
Oh, okay. Like the actual classic Oliver.
The one about the little boy.
Yeah, okay.
So I would hang out at the hotel that she was staying at in Singapore and hang out with the Olivers, with the few kids who were took turns to play Oliver.
Took turns to play Oliver?
Well, yeah, whenever there are like kids shows, which I've worked on a couple of kids shows like Billy Elliot and things. Like you don't just have one Billy Elliot. There are like 4 or 5 kids who all take turns because, you know, they still have to do school and
Quick
stuff
Google
like that.
Billy Elliot as well. I don't think I've heard of that one, but
Oh yeah, well it's about a kid as well. It's the one about ballet.
okay.
It's set in like northern England, in like a mining town, but there's like a boy who wants to do ballet, and
Oh wow, okay. But still, that's awesome though, because
yeah, so they made a musical out of it, and
because that's the thing is like, you know, we were talking about this prior, but it's like for you to be involved in theatre since like basically since you were born, it's like, you know, it's like almost like second nature for you. But at the same time, like a lot of people don't know how to, you know.
That's true. Yeah, I feel like I definitely take it for granted that I know about a lot of shows and I've know about a lot of different jobs within the industry, but
it just sounds,
it is kind of hard to explain sometimes.
But it just sounds amazing though. Like it sounds like so much fun. Like you've gotten so much enjoyment out of just like being a part of, you know, the back end of what makes a show work, right?
It's fun. Yeah, there are definitely perks. And Billy Elliot, I had to move one of my smoke machines from backstage because Elton John wanted to come and take a bow after one of the shows because he did the music for it. Yeah, for Billy Elliot. And so he came and took a bow one night. And that was pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's,
But that's not every day, you know. That was like the one day of that, you know, 5 or 6 month season that I really remember.
You still get to see Elton John go on stage.
Yeah,
though.
yeah. In a tutu, no less.
Oh, really? He was in a tutu? Oh, wow. Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So then, like, how did you, because, like, if your family was into it, and, like, you were brought up into this industry, then, like, where did you kind of first start working? Like, what were your first roots in actually, because now being a lighting technician, right, or a theatre technician, how did you, you know, what was the first thing you did? And then how did you get to, like, where you are now, like, with role-wise?
Well, I think definitely initially it was probably a little bit, well, first of all, a bit of a fluke, a bit of an accident, but also not really an accident because there was definitely a bit of nepotism involved in the way that I knew theatre existed because my parents had brought me around with them, and I'd seen backstage, I'd been to the Opera Centre in Sydney and, you know, been in the Opera House, you know, green room a lot with, you know, a lot of the like acts that were there. I knew about the world already, but it was just kind of what my parents did. I didn't really know that I wanted to do it. But I guess that kind of helped me be aware of, a course. I did a subject at school that was entertainment industry. That's like it was kind of like a TAFE course, but you could do it as part of your like final grade in year 12. Yeah. And it was very basic. It was the first year that course was offered at my school, but I guess I just kind of wanted some bludgy units. I didn't really love year 12, so I wanted to just kind of do something that seemed easy, seemed a bit more practical, less kind of like I'd have to study less basically. And there was this course that was about events, putting on live events.
What way to put it?
Well, that's kind of, I mean, you asked about the history of how I got into it, and it was kind of with a little bit of apathy and accident. But yeah, so I did that subject at school, but again, I didn't really think I wanted a career in it. But I didn't apply to any unis, and I didn't really know. I was just going to kind of take a gap year and see what came up after I finished year 12. And I remember I was sitting at Christmas lunch with my family and my grandparents' family and like a couple family friends of theirs. And one of them was working for the opera. They put on like a big outdoor opera.
Working for the opera?
Yeah, once a year.
Damn, it sounds like you've got the right connections, basically.
Well, my dad worked for the opera for years. Like, we definitely were already in that kind of circle. So I knew of this guy who was a friend of my parents, friend of my grandparents. And he said, "Oh, Matilda, what are you doing? What are you doing after school? Like, do you have any plans for after school holidays?" And I said no, and he said, "Oh well, do you want a job? Do you want to come and like work in the warehouse?" So, in preparation for this show they were putting on, I think on the first day he had me come into this big, you know, tin workshop in Alexandria in Sydney and vacuum clean a tank, like a big like a life-size replica of an army tank. Had there in the warehouse that they'd used on a previous production of Carmen.
Just casually.
And he went, "Well, I think, you know, there definitely are. You end up in some pretty funny situations when you're working in theatre, but I think he probably tried to impress me on my first day. So he gave me like a vacuum and like, you know, chucks and stuff, and I had to basically just dust and clean this whole tank on my first day. But yeah, I spent the next like 6 weeks there, pretty much like painting.
Okay.
With a big roller, painting big flats, big bits of plywood, you know, orange or brown or something. And it turns out those bits were kind of going towards building the kiosks and the kind of bar area for this show they were putting on, which was a big outdoor opera built from scratch, kind of on the other side of the harbour to where the Opera House is. So the Opera House is kind of the backdrop, and they put stadium seating up in the Botanical Gardens, and then they float a stage, a big raked stage with lighting rig and speakers and orchestra pit
On the river.
On the harbour.
On the harbour.
They build scaffolding, and they have 2 big cranes that are on cement blocks under the water in the harbour. There it is. So yeah, there's an big outdoor floating stage. That's West Side Story that they did a few years ago.
That is,
and the one next to it
world.
is Phantom of the Opera.
Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, that I actually went back. So it was my first gig was doing Carmen, which was in 2017. That, you know, was off the back of that warehouse painting gig. And then since then, basically, didn't have any plans after school, but I didn't end up taking a gap year. I ended up working back-to-back show to show
that's the thing, is like,
ever since then. And yeah, that's
this, right?
La Traviata is that one with the big chandelier.
But like, that's the thing, is like, you basically fell into this, right? And you loved it, right?
Yeah.
And so then with that, what's the point of taking a gap year? You've fallen into something you really enjoy. Take it as it comes and enjoy it whilst you can. Like.
And it is very much kind of like being I don't know if you've had like gigging musicians on the podcast before, but you kind of fall into this, you know, as one gig ends, the next one starts. And it's easiest to leapfrog onto another gig straight away because you've got those people around you that you've just been working with, and you figure out, like, there are always conversations like, oh, what gig are you doing next? Or have you heard, you know, what the next show is, or stuff like that. But yeah, Carmen, the one with the big backwards letters that says Carmen. Yeah, that's the front, and that's the... Oh, no, that must have been... That's the first production. See the tank there? That's the tank that I vacuum.
That you...
That I vacuum cleaned?
So you vacuum cleaned that...
tank on my first day. And then we ended up... See the cranes there? So, that's and then under the stage, there are kind of these 2 catwalks where you can walk onto the actual deck from the land, and then under the stage is where the orchestra are and where all of the crew are, like basically in little rooms, makeshift rooms built with like builder's plastic amongst the scaffolding, is where all the sound racks, well, not all the sound racks, but a lot of the sound racks are, where all the props are kept. And so that was the first gig that I ended up
That's amazing.
Doing. They basically needed extra people because it's a bit of a strange, it's only a 6-week run that they do, and it's in the rainiest part of the year.
Oh, really?
Of course.
But then it didn't rain on the night, though, obviously.
It rained almost every night.
Oh.
Yeah.
So then it's all waterproof, surely.
You'd hope so. But it's funny. It's such a short season, and it's all thrown together so quickly, and often quite quickly.
Yeah, okay.
It kind of is a situation of how can we make this set and all these props and costumes last for 6 weeks? Not how can we waterproof them as if we were going to open a show for a year.
Yeah.
How can we just scrape by on budget?
Wow.
And make it look spectacular and amazing for 6 weeks. And so there are a lot of wet wigs, a lot of wet costumes, a lot of props that really don't bode well in the water, and that provides an extra challenge for the people who work there to maintain things at such a rapid rate on such a short run. Like normally you wouldn't really have to worry about too much maintenance on a 6-week season, but for something like Hosh, when everything is sopping wet every single night, a lot of extra thinking and planning has to go into the day-to-day.
That is amazing, though.
Yeah.
Like, I'm speechless, honestly. I don't even know what to say.
And yeah, they have fireworks at interval. Like, I think the picture under, there's fireworks on the set with the bull. Yeah, that one. So at interval, they have fireworks every night.
But see, that's the crazy thing, though, right? Is that this is just Sydney, you know? And it's just like, it just seems like for something like this to happen in, you know, like in Australia, this looks like something you'd see over in, you know, America or something like that, like something that's absolutely spectacular and out
It's
of this
big.
world.
Yeah, it's really big.
But then, like, so it sells out as well, right? And it's like it's a big thing in Sydney, right?
It's big. It's funny because it's something that the opera puts on. So it's the opera. It's Opera Australia that does it.
Yeah, okay.
And they have I think they have a sponsor. They have a Korean sponsor who puts a lot of money into doing this. So it's kind of for the love of opera that something of this scale gets put on. Obviously, so much money has to go into it to build it, to crew it. You know, it's kind of like doing a big outdoor music festival, but for 6 weeks, and it's an opera.
That's exactly it.
That's kind of what the gig is like. And so something like that, you know, it requires a lot of money from the outset. Like a lot of, it's, you know, only because Opera Australia is an established company and has a lot of government funding that something like this really gets to be put on at all.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, and it can be hard, like for the crew and the cast. Sometimes these kinds of gigs for 6 weeks aren't, you know, they're not paid as well because the company just isn't able to take such a huge financial risk.
That's it.
So it does sell well, and it takes I guess they've started doing musicals more recently to try and get a younger demographic in, because it usually has just been like the people who go to the opera house all the time, people who have the year kind of subscription to whatever the opera
See, I always
puts on.
thought it was more of an older demographic for things like theatre, musicals, opera, that kind of stuff.
It definitely is. It's got a bit of a, you know, the history of theatre is a bit classist, a bit elitist.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Well,
you're paying hundreds of dollars.
That,
You're paying hundreds of dollars
like
to see something like Hamilton or whatever. So it doesn't really lend itself to every socioeconomic level.
Yeah.
But I think because, I don't know, we have such a like culture of theatre in Australia that's kind of been struggling. Like the arts industry doesn't really get heroed very much by the government.
Exactly.
It relies on people coming and investing their time and money into it. They're trying to market it to more than just old people, old retirees, basically, because that demographic isn't going to be around forever.
That's it.
And
But
you know,
it is
to stimulate arts in Australia, I feel like appealing. The big companies that have been around for a long time, like Opera Australia, need to be trying to bring in a younger audience.
That's it, yeah.
Because something like this, it looks so massive and spectacular, and yes, the tickets are expensive, but like the profit margin is still really small. It's a big financial risk to take, to only run for 6 weeks, and you know it may well be rained out, and everybody might just not come or demand refunds or whatever. Like it's really not. It is a much more risky industry than it seems when the product is so spectacular.
Yeah.
You know?
Because that's the thing, is like Beth got me free tickets to an American in Paris a while ago, and I'd never actually gone to go see like a theatre musical at the same time.
Yeah.
And actually going and sitting down, I mean, everyone there was, you know, in their 70s, but for me to go there, I fell in love with it, to be honest. I loved the theatre. I loved literally just seeing the whole thing like unfold. But people these days, well, not, you know, I'd say kids these days, they're so enthralled by music festivals and dubstep and drum and bass and the whole like music industry that they forget about classical art like this. Like this is, you know, this has been around for a very long time, this kind of stuff. But then it's like, how would they actually get, you know, a younger generation involved to actually go and see this thing? Because as you said, it kind of does come off as like a bit of an elitist thing, unfortunately.
Well, it has a history of only the people who had, you know,
money,
disposable income, of course, to be able to fork out. Like you could go to a movie for an hour and a half for $20.
Yeah.
Why would you spend, you know, $200+ or even $300 for something like Hosh? It's a really, really dear ticket to buy for 3 hours of entertainment.
But then
you know?
looking at these photos, it looks like an experience in itself. Like how long do these shows go for? Like an hour or something like that, or 2 hours?
So an opera is usually 3 or even more.
3 hours.
Yeah.
But then how is that not getting your money's worth then?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's getting your money's worth because I'm into it. And you know, there are definitely comparable like expenditures people take for hobbies, like going on an expensive holiday for a few days or a weekend, or you know, spending hundreds of dollars on a sports subscription for the year or whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess the opera especially is definitely more of an older crowd. But musicals, I think, are becoming a little more mainstream and a little more exciting for younger people, kind of with like Hamilton, for example. Hamilton like changed the theatre culture a lot, I think, because it got filmed and released on Disney Plus. So then people who maybe couldn't afford to actually go see it in person could watch it for not much money at all, and
So
that
that
kind
was
of
the actual theatrical version on Disney Plus. Then.
So that was the original Broadway cast.
Okay.
So before they had a big cast change, as they often do after a couple of years of being open, they decided to film a full length performance and put it on Disney Plus. And I think even before Hamilton opened, it kind of had changed the theatre culture a little bit in the way that, like, because Hamilton came here, and I worked on it in 2021, and it was kind of funny. We were all like, how is an Australian audience going to care about like American politics? But because people had already, because the Spotify, like the album for the show was released on Spotify in 2016 or whenever it came out, it suddenly meant that anyone across the world could listen to the entirety of the show without paying for it.
Yeah.
So it became like a cult classic,
exactly,
even in places where the show hadn't opened or had never been performed, and in countries that didn't know anything about American politics necessarily. Having it be like an exclusive hot ticket to have to go and buy a ticket to a musical before you know what it's about, to then understand what it's like to see a theatre show. With Hamilton, you could kind of already have that access.
Yeah.
And then decide you wanted to go and see it when it did open in Australia,
good,
So
though.
the season's like sold out. It's still running. It's just about to finish its Australian tour now and go overseas to Asia.
Yeah.
But I think, the culture of like having like social media and stuff and musical theatre content being released legally that isn't just bootlegs online, that definitely means that it reaches a younger demographic, and kids can be like ask their parents for tickets to go to the theatre, or save up themselves or whatever. But that isn't immediately something that a kid's going to want to go and do. Like a teenager or a young adult's going to want to risk spending a lot of their paycheck on. That's probably why it tends to be more of an old person hobby. But I think with social media it's becoming more of an accessible thing to go and do. Even if you can't afford to go to the theatre, you can know what the story's about because it's on Spotify or whatever. Yeah,
there's other mediums of media that are available to be able to actually, see or hear or anything like that, to be able to get an idea of like, this sounds like a good idea.
I think that helps. Yeah, I think that's a positive for theatre. I feel like there are a lot of maybe people who are critical of things being released on Disney Plus, where it's like, oh, well, it's not the same as being in the room. Like, does that discredit, or like, are movies being made, based on musicals actually discrediting the original work? Yeah. I don't really think so, because I think it promotes it, because it reaches more people that maybe would never have gone and seen a musical unless it was there on Netflix. I think it's good.
With this, with your first show being Carmen, right? How was it actually like? Because like, what did you do for Carmen other than vacuum tidy the tank?
Oh yeah. So initially that warehouse gig was just labor hire. Like I was just there. I had no skills except for just wanting to be there.
Yeah.
And being kind of easy to work with, I guess. There were just a bunch of older blokey mechs who worked in the warehouse, and then me being freshly 18, like listening to Triple M, painting bits of plywood, and then sitting quietly with them while they had their smoke break every now and again. That was that 6 weeks. And then because it's such a short season and it only happens once a year in like March and April, sometimes the opera can struggle to find crew for it. And so my family friend who'd become my boss at the warehouse said, hey, you did that course at school, right? Like, have you ever follow spotted before? They need follow spots for HOSH, which is Opera on Sydney Harbour. So a follow spot is basically a massive light that's operated manually for concerts and live scale
to follow
productions.
The actors on stage.
Literally like a spotlight to follow the actors around.
Okay.
So like smaller gigs won't have any follow spots because you can just, rig a few lights on a bar in front of the stage and point it at them. But with something as large scale as like a concert, for example, like a soloist or like musical, big kind of large scale things that warrant a lot of face light as well as having a lot of like kind of pretty lighting design. You kind of, if you need to see somebody's face clearly, then a follow spot, and it's a moving target, obviously it's much easier to have somebody physically sitting there controlling the light rather than trying to program
that thing
a lot of
so
moves.
heavy, honestly.
So that the blue light there shining on that person, like that, as that person walks across stage, the person sitting up in the roof will move move the light left and right
So
to follow
then
them.
how was it doing that for the first time ever? Like just jumping straight into it? Like, did you have prior training, or was it just like, here's the light, follow this person?
I basically had no prior training. Yeah, he said, "Oh, have you done this before?" And I went, "Yeah, sure," but I really hadn't. Like, I think the follow spot we had at school, like, you know, for the variety night, for the dance, you know, talent contest or whatever we did at my high school, was like a park hand, like a very small conventional light on a kind of tripod looking thing, and it was really not functionally a follow spot at all. Yeah, something similar, maybe a little bit bigger than that, but like something like that is what I was trying to follow people with, you know, only a few meters away
But
from
those
them.
things get
So
very
that was-
hot though as well,
They
right?
do get, it wasn't like literally a park hand like that, but
Yeah.
it was definitely much more of a conventional light rather than a big, you
Yeah.
know, custom, like properly designed to be manually operated follow spot. Yeah, so I basically had no idea what I was doing, and I took this job. And before I even got a chance to follow spot, I was a part of the lighting crew doing the bump in.
The bump in.
So setting everything up. So that stage, that big outdoor stage at Carmen gets built from scratch. Like it's built into the botanical gardens. So, you know, we didn't have to build the, you know, we didn't have to help set up the cranes or the scaffolding, but we did have to rig venue lighting and build huge trusses and bolt them together, you know, in the sun for a couple weeks in March.
How did you find doing that? Because then like
It was a construction site. Yeah.
But then like it'd be very full on physically, right? So like
Really
you'd be
full on.
stuffed at the end of the day.
Yeah,
But,
we did long days. We did, you know,
like what time would you start?
8 to 12-hour days every day. We'd start at 8 a.m. and we'd finish around like 6 or 7. And then when we got into rehearsing, we would go 8 till 10 p.m.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and that was almost every day of the week, in the sun, in the heat, and then it also sometimes in the rain,
So
pulling cables through the mud, and you know, just you know, that like imagining a grandstand at a music festival that's been rained out.
Yeah.
That basically, that
That
building
sounds like such an
that.
experience.
Yeah,
Like,
that was my first, like my
Yeah.
first job, really. I had a casual job when I was in high school, but my first job in the industry and my first job after finishing school
it sounds like you just
was
got
that.
thrown in the deep end basically.
Fully. Yeah, absolutely.
But that's the way to do it though, right? To see if you sink or swim, and it looks like
Well,
you
I didn't
swam,
fall in the
right?
harbour.
Yeah,
So,
that's it.
and people have.
Yeah.
People
Oh,
absolutely
people
have.
have fallen in the
yeah,
harbour.
the guy who hired me, my boss, and had fallen in a few years prior on
Really?
Madam Butterfly. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, he was all right though.
Yeah. It's just water. Yeah.
It's just water. It's just
Yeah,
water.
as
Not,
long as-
maybe not the cleanest water, but it's just water.
But like when you go to apply for things like this, like, you know, to be part of the crew, do they check and make sure you know you can swim?
You can
or-
swim? Absolutely, they
Yeah,
do.
okay,
Yeah, you do
okay.
have to sign that, and they have a what are they called? Like a full time like lifeguard on site.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, for that bump in and rehearsals, they have somebody there
Would-
because we're walking, you know, across not fully built yet,
Hmm.
you know, bridges to get onto the stage and to do our job.
So
So,
then
they
how many-
definitely looked after.
How many people were involved with the bump in crew and the rehearsing crew then? Something like that.
That's a really good question. I don't even know the number,
About
but
200,
the
100,
the
or-
bump in crew would have been at least 100 people
Wow.
on site at any one time. And then I think the show crew is usually more like 30 or 35.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe even 40. Just like it's definitely bigger for something like this, which is why they hired me.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of the bumping crew were like backpackers. I remember these really lovely like German backpackers that were there to help on the construction site for
That's
a few
amazing,
days and
yeah.
stuff like that. It was just such a melting pot of different like kinds of people. Like I was there as at 18, definitely feeling a little out of place with like some of the experienced lighting technicians that I was working under. But you know, then there was somebody who'd never done an opera before. They'd only ever done live concerts. And then there was somebody there who used to be a chef and then ended up working for the ballet. And, you know, it just I didn't feel too out of place because there were so many people with varying levels of experience anyway. And the kind of vibe, especially for an odd gig such as Hosh, the outdoor Sydney Harbour show, nobody can really prepare. You know, everybody's kind of making it up and making it work. Just like a dynamic, you know, doing a music festival, you know, building it all in one day. Nobody's done it exactly like that before. It relies on everybody working together and kind of teaching each other, but also kind of just figuring it out on the day.
See, that's what
So that was what it was. I was figuring everything out on the day because I went in with absolutely no prior knowledge, but yeah, I
That's
felt really,
amazing, though.
really like held and taught. I had a great head So there's like often a head follow spot operator. So I think there were 6 of us on that production.
Okay.
4 of us like front of house, like behind the audience in the seats, and 2 on tall bits of truss about, 7 or 8 meters in the air, shooting across stage with their follow spots in harnesses. I didn't have to be one of those, gratefully, for my first time.
But have you done that before?
I haven't actually had to be harnessed. Okay. No, I've only been up on like bridges, like walkways, catwalks and stuff. I've never been on my own standalone post. I think it would be a cool experience for sure, but definitely I think I need to get used to timing my bathroom breaks a little better if I had to do something like that. Yeah. But yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, I think there were 6 of us. One of us had been the head follow spot on that particular gig for many years before and had done a production of Carmen. So she was all over it. And I think there were 3 of us in that group that year that hadn't follow spotted before. So she had to be prepared to completely train us from scratch, not only teach us how to do the show specifically, and how to work outside on something of that scale. And, we had wind and rain and all sorts of extra obstacles beyond like a normal theatre show. She had to fully teach me from scratch. And so, yeah, just learned on the job, figured it out, and ended up being good enough at it that she then went on to My Fair Lady at the Capitol Theatre, which is an inside normal venue. And she needed to take 3 or 4 weeks off to go and do a music festival, and she had me come in to cover her. So that she helped me then get work on my first musical theatre job. Yeah.
So that was your step in the next direction.
Yeah, but her training, she fully trained me from nothing, basically. I had the background of knowing what a theatre show looks like.
Yeah.
Because I'd seen them growing up, which is something that maybe not a lot of people my age had done. So I definitely had that as an advantage. But then, yeah, practically actually using the follow spot and everything I learned during Bump In about rigging and, nuts and bolts and tools and everything like that, I learnt in those few months.
So then how did you find the training, though? Like, because if you'd never been trained in that area before, then, like, did you find that the training was like, okay, I can comfortably go out and actually do the job now? Because, sometimes with different, like, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but it's like, say the job I've just started working at now as an emergency response officer, with that, I've gone off and done training with multiple different people, but they've all taught me different things. And so then I've had to kind of make my own, like, collaborate all the training I've learned and then make my own decisions on how I should do certain things and this and that.
I think that's totally similar to theatre. It's not a formal training process, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Like, there are courses you can do, but the way I learnt, it was completely informal. I didn't have to end up making the decisions because it's always very collaborative. It's always kind of a team run by a couple of people in charge and then a big crew that have to break off into smaller parts and get each individual gig done, but, with specific instructions. So I was never kind of having to make it up on my own.
Yeah.
But I definitely had to, collage a lot of people's experience together. And it was more like, watching other people do the job and then picking it up and having a go myself.
Yeah, okay.
I was definitely very, like, mentored and nurtured, and like there are a few people who specifically like took me under their wing and said, hey, like, so when we're doing a job like this, we need to watch out for X, Y, and Z. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is how we're going to get there. I'm going to use this cable to go from A to B. Now you have a go, or like these are the principles of running power and running DMX cables and all sorts of things that I just had no concept of before. So yeah, you have to be specifically, there are obviously things you have to be specifically told about, but it is a lot of kind of watch and learn.
That's amazing though, because the amount of skills you would learn just from being a part of the crew is astronomical almost. Like,
and it's pretty common for to learn on the job, because each gig is different. You can prepare as much as you like and Google and research and stuff, but then actually being thrown into it is the only way that you're practically hands-on going to have to learn. So I've then had many situations since where I've been the one who knows what's going on a bump in, and I'm then teaching exactly what I was taught years prior to someone else. Like, I think I've just about regurgitated everything I've ever been told to someone else.
But that's
in
great
the
though,
industry.
because you were once the student and now you're the mentor.
Totally.
And
And,
now you're
I'm still
teaching.
very much the student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. In an industry like this, you're always learning and
Yeah.
picking up pieces and different things. As you said, every show is different, right?
Yeah.
So with
yeah.
every show being different, there's always different things going on and the things you might not know. But that's why you can talk to someone who has done the show before
Yeah.
or has done something similar and they know the answer.
Totally. And it doesn't necessarily, like your professional ability isn't necessarily based on your age.
Yeah.
Or even the amount of gigs you've done. Like
Yeah.
I might have worked on, 100 different shows for years or the same show for 5 years or whatever, and then go on to another gig and be completely out of my depth. Because I've just never seen anything specifically like that before, And that's why, there's definitely that network of knowledge that you lean on. Like I've had bosses of mine hit up their mate who's the boss on the show in another state and said, hey mate, have you ever encountered this? Or when you use this system, how did you troubleshoot something like this? So it's definitely, obviously there's a hierarchy in the positions that everybody's doing, but somebody in a local position might have a specific piece of insight because of the experience they've had on another gig that might actually show the bosses a thing or two, It just is constantly a teaching and learning environment. So it was irregular that I was there kind of so young and so early on, but...
Well, what is that normal age
pretty...
demographic for people that get into back end of theatre?
Well, I think it's definitely all ages. I know people that have had full careers and only started theatre at 40 or 45.
Yeah, okay.
I know other people like me who've been working since they were 18 or even 16. Like I have friends who got gigs through just strange out-of-the-box circumstances and ended up being, a sound tech at the local live music venue with their brother or their cousin or whatever at 15 or 16 and then has just
awesome,
gone
though.
with it from there.
Yeah.
It's kind of just how whenever or however you're exposed to it, you can then be taught on the job. There isn't really a linear career path often. I'd say now, because there are some courses you can do, you can do it in a little more of a linear way. Like there are unis that you can go to, at a school leaver age, like tertiary education. So then I think in the last, since I kind of started in the industry, there's been an influx of mid-20s kind of thing. And you always get, because there are stage management courses and stuff you can do.
Yeah.
So there kind of tends to be an average-ish age of kind of 25 to 30 now, I'd say.
Yeah, okay.
But when I started, everyone was at least 8 years my senior, I think.
Really?
Something like that. Yeah. Everyone was... Well, I guess that would make sense. Everyone was kind of around 30 when I was 18,
Because that's one thing I wanted to ask, where it's qualifications in a way, how does, you basically knew someone who got you to, clean a tank and then you got thrown into the deep end, but then you've got the experience behind you. But
then I've got a gig under my belt and for the next gig I got, that was all that was required.
Yeah,
and, having worked well within the team and everybody talks. So everybody that I worked with on that first gig, I think I applied for a gig at Angel Place after that.
Angel Place.
It's like a concert venue in Sydney.
Okay. Can we Google that as well? Angel Place.
Angel Place, yeah. It's just it's a concert hall. They have choral performances and orchestra, stuff like that. And I just applied for I think it was a solo female singer. And they just needed
It's amazing.
It's beautiful, isn't it? So the bird cages in the alley are what it's kind of famous for, but it is inside. It's a it's a concert venue. So I think I applied for a follow spot gig on a show there, and I had sent an email to a lighting designer and been like, "Hello, I'm Matilda Press. I just worked on Hosh as a follow spot. I want a job." And the woman who had trained me on Hosh was a friend of his. So he then found out who the head follow spot had been on Carmen and texted her and said, "Hey, this girl Matilda's emailed me. Is she any good?"
Yeah.
And so then she said, "Yes,
Put
approve."
a good word in, yep.
Actually, I'm not sure if it was the woman who trained me or if it was the stage manager. It was just, even somebody who wasn't in my department ended up vouching for me to then get on to my next gig. So I wasn't completely blindly given work. Initially, I kind of was. But then from that point onwards, the gigs I got were based on the work I'd done on my last show, if that makes sense.
So then, would it be similar in a way? Because, like, say from my background, right, being in music and DJing and nightlife and this and that, is it actually similar where it's like, you know, where as long as you're a team player, it's all word of mouth, like you were saying, like people can put a good word in.
Yeah.
But then it's like if people don't really do a good job or pull their slack or they're lazy or aren't really interested, then they can basically just not find work because essentially you're a contractor, right?
Yeah, so I had an ABN for a little while, but I don't need one anymore.
Yeah.
You tend to, in Sydney specifically, it works where you're put on the payroll of the particular job that you're doing. And if you're doing a long-term season on a musical theatre show, they'll have payroll set up. So they become your employer.
Yeah.
So you're employed casually or full-time, but on a fixed-term contract. So
for your resume, do you put down things like doing stage technician for, you know, this show and that show? Okay.
Yeah. But I can probably count on one hand the amount of times I've actually sent my resume to somebody.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Most of the jobs I've gotten have been expressing interest and getting the job, or getting a call saying, "Do you want to come and do this job?"
See, that's just like the DJing industry as well.
Yeah.
The nightlife. It's just like a friend will hit you up and be like, "Hey, I've got work available for this. Do you want to come do it?" And then you just work as a contractor, invoice the venue directly. They pay you, but at the same time, you have a booking manager who you're kind of working for.
Yeah.
But you can work for 5 booking managers at the same time if you want to.
Yeah, so it's like that. So being a freelancer, you can be on a venue's books. So you work whatever show comes in there or do shifts or don't, like any kind of casual job. But most of the work I've done have been like independently. I've reached out to a company and then been employed just for the term of the contract. And I loved how you said before about like, you know, you not being, if you're on a job and somebody doesn't recommend you, you might not find work because you're not kind of keen and interested. And really being keen and interested are the main factors. Like,
that's it.
I got vouched for by a stage manager, even though I was in the lighting department, because I was good to work with and nice and got along with everybody well and had the attitude of wanting to go further in the industry. I think that's probably the main criteria. The work you actually do, of course, matters once you're there. And I have seen people get let go because maybe their reputation preceded them a little bit. But it is kind of a reputational based thing. Like you can maybe get recommended to DJ somewhere by a friend of a friend who's never heard your work.
That's it.
But you know, you're vouched for based on word of mouth, and then you prove yourself on the day. That happens a lot in theatre as well.
But see, that's where it's astounding, right? Because it's like in the media and the arts, it's like this is a big thing. We're being vouched for and actually being a team player and being able to, like, you know, super friendly and getting along with everyone. It's like these things really do matter. Like,
the networking is really important, and hopefully it'll happen by accident, just by showing up and being friendly and doing a good job. But yeah, I guess specifically like performers would know a lot about this too, but like getting along with everybody is a really, really intrinsic part of the job. In a career where it's not linear, where there isn't formal training, you have to be cool enough that somebody wants to mentor you, and you're not going to get anywhere if you're standoffish or you're not, you know, curious and open-minded and willing to learn. You might even have lots of experience working on gigs, but if you're not open to learning and training and having an open mind and changing your way of thinking about a specific task, you don't get very far either. So, but yeah, I guess it's probably like that because the industry doesn't have a kind of easily set up career path. Application system. People don't really know the job exists until they're there.
That's it,
so then to be in that environment, it's kind of a like everybody, team effort, you know, group hug kind of a situation.
That's the same thing with the DJing as well.
Yeah.
Because like with the DJing, it's like everyone wants to be DJing at festivals or nightclubs or this or that. But it's the equivalent of like you can work 1 hour as a nightclub DJ, or you can work 6 hours as a pub DJ. And it's as a 6 hours as a pub DJ, it becomes more affordable to be able to, and sustainable to do that as a full-time job or a proper part-time job. But working as 1 hour, you don't make nearly enough money to be able to survive, basically.
Yeah.
It's just 1 hour kind of 1 hour contracting. As a contractor though, have you ever had periods where you didn't have work? Or has it always been full-time? Like, go, go, go?
Well, because I work on fixed term contracts and like a show, like the run of play for a musical will probably be, from 2 months to 5
Yeah.
to 9 months. I've known that I've had job security for that time.
Yeah.
And you kind of have a lot of time over that season to book your next gig, that
Yep.
kind of thing. But a specific period of time I definitely didn't have any work was COVID.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, there have been other times where I've waited for a show to finish and then not taken the next job, and I've gone on holiday for a couple months and then I've hopped on something when I've gotten back. There's definitely I feel very privileged to have a lot of that work available to me. You sacrifice a lot of job security from being in this job. So if you kind of need a full-time job at all times, you don't really have that luxury sometimes, and you may well be left without work. Like, for instance, when COVID hit, it wasn't just everybody deciding not to take the next gig. There just was not a next gig
Yeah,
for
that's it.
anyone.
Yeah. There's nothing going
And the
on.
kind of ramping up when everything did start opening up again after that, it was a really strange situation because suddenly nobody had any work. So suddenly the shows, I feel like a lot of people did leave the industry, so we didn't end up having too many crew for the show.
Same thing with
But it
every
was kind of
industry.
like a who's who of, like, my first gig back doing the bump in for Pippin, I think, was the first show that opened after COVID in Sydney. It was like suddenly I was working with every experienced technician I'd ever
Yeah.
been with in the same room. There were no, backpackers, obviously. There were no, green new people. It was
Yeah.
just everybody who were stayers, who were career technicians, were suddenly all in the same room at the same time. When before COVID, 2 of them were on Hamilton and 2 of them were on
That's it. Yeah.
Frozen and 2 of them were on this and 2 of them were on that and whatever. But suddenly all the head of lightings that I've ever worked with were all the bump in crew. So it was kind of strange. We all got to the end of our contracts at the same time, which usually doesn't happen. It's usually a rolling network.
That would
of
have been amazing. Though,
jumping
as well.
around. It was really cool, but it really showed that, wow, we all suddenly got very equalized when suddenly we were just all unemployed for 9 months or more.
How did you find it with COVID? So, for me, right, since my passion has always been music and DJing and making people smile and dancing and having just a great time, right, and giving off that energy. When COVID happened for me, my mental health really suffered. And it's just because it was just well, what happens now? I've spent the last 8 years doing this, and then there goes my whole entire hobby, passion, dream, full-time job at the same time.
Yeah, it's a
down
good
the
point.
drain. What happened for you during that time?
Well, I think it happened to me. It happened to a lot of my friends that really, when you work such odd hours, such long hours, and you do work in nightlife, so you tend to be working when everyone else is out having fun at some other gig. You're having fun at your gig, but it's usually in the times where other career people would be social, like other people who do other 9 to 5 jobs. It would be their weekend, their time to kind of have that community outside of work. It can be a little bit insular in the way where the people you work with become your community and become your friends as well. It all gets kind of blended together.
That's what I love about it, though.
We love that about it until suddenly we don't have work, and you kind of look around and go, oh, maybe all my friends were just the people I saw every day on that last gig for the last few months, and now they're all gone. Now they've gone back to their home states to be isolated with their families, and who am I going to hang out with now? I feel like for people who identify with their job, which I think can sometimes be beautiful and amazing when we work in such a fun social environment, but it can also be really unhealthy in that way. And it became, I know a lot of my friends became really isolated, and we all had to kind of check in with each other, and we did Zoom calls and stuff, but also I stopped being in touch with some of my friends that I had just worked with, because it turns out we were colleagues, we were work friends.
That's it.
I'm lucky that I still had, friends outside the industry, and I've had to work really hard to arrive really late and really sober to parties, or, catch, the beginning of their dinner or whatever before I then have to go and do a shift. Maintaining those friendships outside of the industry became really, the importance of that became really obvious when COVID hit, because if you hadn't kind of maintained that real friendship beyond just the job you do every day, you ended up being a little lonely for sure. I think, my mental health definitely suffered for suddenly not having, felt like I didn't have a purpose, which is silly, of course, and very capitalist. But I think it happens a lot in the, like in the, entertainment industry that can be quite anti-capitalist. It can be quite fun. You're doing things like, recording a podcast like just for fun without any profit off of it. It can be an industry that's really great and really kind of against just making money. It's also about the enjoyment, but then it can become very tied up in your identity, and you kind of lose sight of life outside of work. Work does really become your life when you're working so often and such weird hours, so.
But it's crazy how the industry is like that, right? Because that's the same thing with me, where it's like all these people I've met and I socialize and go to this bar and do this and do that, and it's like I treat them as friends, but at the end of the day they are work colleagues.
Yeah.
Because I don't really see them outside of the industry.
Yeah.
But then I try to, but they're already doing their own thing, or they've got family or wife or kids or whatever's going on. But it's like when you go to work, then you're all buddies, you're all friendly, you all get along, you're all good mates, you hang out, you do this, you do that.
And the job can definitely feel like a party sometimes, like especially working on Moulin Rouge, like everybody's like, well, hey, like we're doing the can, and everyone is happy and smiling and having a great time, You don't really miss that social connection when your work is so friendly and happy and bubbly like that.
Exactly, yeah.
But finding a work-life balance can be hard, but it's still very important, I think, even when you're working in such a fun
that's what
job.
Newcomers into like industries like this need to realize, where in media and arts and entertainment and stuff like that, it can be so much fun compared to like a 9-to-5 job at like, as an accountant or something like that, where it's like we get to go out and we get to help create these performance pieces, For a DJ, obviously, it's me playing music, trying to get people to dance. But for you, though, it's helping create the theatre, basically. Create the entertainment for people to buy tickets and go do this and do that.
Yeah.
But then they don't see the back end of it. That's Tilly the little cat, by the way.
Tilly, hi.
So that is like the wonderful thing about it. If you could have had it any other way, like, would you have potential? Like, what did you actually originally want to do when you were in high school? Did you want to fall into this, or it just happened, basically?
It just happened. I really didn't have any plans. I thought, most of my friends were going to uni, so I had pressures and stuff to apply to unis at first. I thought, maybe I'll go and do psychology or social science or something, just because I liked people. I kind of liked people's behavior and
why people do people things, right?
hanging out and communication and stuff like that were things I was vaguely interested in, but I ended up not applying because it seemed silly to me to go to uni when I didn't actually have I don't know, it felt like a lot of money to spend on just something I was interested in, which I guess
You're
is
lucky
totally it's totally a valid reason to go to uni, but I kind of, I was also I wanted to go to uni for the kind of social events and things as well, and I decided against it. I decided I wanted to find that on my own, and I thought maybe I'll take a couple of years off and figure it out, and then figure out what I want to do. But I guess I got that kind of social community. Like I really found that those like social events, like obviously you have a lot of perks when you do the job on such a big commercial thing. There are opening night parties, there are events that are put on, there are definitely perks that you get from you get to give your bring friends to opening nights on, and you get to dress up and go to parties and stuff. That I kind of found those social events and that community in theatre, as well as really loving follow spotting and loving like building the shows and getting to be a part of it. So it kind of just accidentally fulfilled the couple things I was looking for. And I guess behaviorally, like kind of socially, having that interest in connecting with people and kind of navigating different dynamics in how people best get along and how people best work together in such a strange
just how
team
it all comes together.
Sometimes I guess I got some of that satisfaction as well. It kind of became a case study on like how people get along and how people work together when they're not necessarily all of the same mindset or the same age group or the same experience level. I kind of had to learn a lot of those kind of behavioral behavioral things.
It's just learning how to interact and just hang out and have a good time at the end of the day. See, that's a similar thing with me as well. It's like, when I go out, I meet so many different people. It's not a good idea to be standoffish and quiet and the whole lot. It's just like, be friendly. You're there to work. At the same time, you're there to have fun.
Yeah.
So,
I think the lines can definitely get blurred a little bit. But being an extrovert, I love making friends with the people I work with, so it kind of works.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you can be a little bit burned if like a contract ends and then suddenly, nobody's texting you back anymore because the show's over. And that's, something that I've had to kind of grow up with and learn a little bit too of how to have realistic expectations when working in such a fun social industry. Like it can be a little bit surface level sometimes, the friendships that you make, but if you have healthy expectations of that and that, not to just take workplace relationships for granted in that way, or take real outside of work relationships for granted when you've suddenly made new exciting friends on a new, in a new venue or whatever, then, it'll be okay. It's something I've had to learn for sure.
You never know who you will meet or who, like when you go out and about, like, just from doing it every single day you leave your house or your apartment, right, is an adventure basically into the job, into the role. But it's just being able to just, have a good time whilst it's there and actually socialize and network.
Yeah.
I was going to ask as well. So talking about introvert and extrovert, right? So you're an extrovert, right? And I would safely say that I'm an extrovert as well. Like, I love meeting people and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But do you find sometimes like after the show, after, when you've just got like a little spare moment, sometimes you can be potentially an introvert where you just want to rest and then not hide away or anything, because an introvert doesn't really hide away, but you just want time to yourself just to relax and kick back and
definitely. It can definitely be a very overstimulating place to work sometimes.
Yeah.
You're working with a really massive group of people who are usually quite animated, and it's quite a demanding job, and we work pretty late into the evening, and you kind of do feel like you need to take your time to wind down, even though we finish a show at 10:30 or 11. Taking a couple hours to myself after the show and winding down and being quiet is definitely necessary. Some nights, we'll finish the show on a high and everybody will go out clubbing together and you kind of keep the good vibes going. But that can be pretty exhausting to maintain for sure. I definitely take time to wind down after such a kind of loud, bright, flashy environment. It's not like you're going into a chill situation and sitting back and relaxing. It's definitely I don't know. It's social. It's social. It's social and it's in your face, and it's definitely an extroverted atmosphere.
That's exactly it.
Which I like and suits me, but everybody needs a break sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. Because that's where it is. It's like I was going to try and mention the whole idea about burning out, and like you basically just you painted it black and white. Just that it's like sometimes after the show you do need to just go home and chill because you might be exhausted.
Yeah.
And the pressure might be there where everyone else is already full of beans and ready to go and want to keep going out clubbing or doing this or doing that.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to take time for yourself just so that way you can still perform at 100% for work.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it is work.
Yeah.
But it's such a fun job that it's not. It's like it's the passion for work.
Yeah. You hope to forget that you're working, and I do achieve that most of the time, but.
Sometimes,
then of course you kind of need to, you need to be brought back down to earth a bit. Exactly. I think COVID did that for a lot of people. I think it came at a really good, like it came at a time where everybody was like, we were close to opening a new theatre in Sydney. There was a lot of work going around. I was going to go on tour. I don't know. I feel like I'd taken a lot of jobs back to back to back, and I don't know. I don't know if it was shared industry wide, but suddenly having a forced break, it felt like that was the first break that a lot of us had taken in many years. When you're like, I had a lot of friends at the time that were gigging musicians, and that's such a, like, there's absolutely no job security in that. Similarly to being a freelancer in any aspect of the industry, you feel like you've got to take the next gig, you've got to book your weekend out, because if the work's coming now, like, I don't know if it's going to keep coming in a few weeks, so I've just got to keep booking myself for things.
It's so similar to DJing.
Yeah, you can burn out for sure. And I feel like sometimes working on long contracts and not taking breaks, you're kind of in a bit of a constant state of burnout, but you kind of do it because you have that pressure too. So COVID, I think, was a real big wake up call to a lot of people that I had worked with. I knew of a lot of people who left the industry for good. Suddenly they had a few months at home with their families and their kids and their pets, and they got to see the sunset every day and do what they wanted with their day to day. Obviously not financially, and some like went and got other jobs, were forced into other industries because the entertainment industry ceased to exist. They ended up getting 9-to-5 jobs or working from home, or, you know, and some people who went and did that loved that flexibility and actually decided to not come back to gigging. So I think, you know, you can kind of forget that there's anything else out there, and you can get a little bit trapped in the kind of industry community. So COVID was kind of like a break for us all to actually look around and realize, oh, there actually has to be life outside of work, because sometimes work disappears.
It's 100% that. It was just a massive wake-up call for everybody.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask as well, we were talking about this the other night, the first night I actually met you, but Sydney seemed to actually go through quite a few, like, you know, lockdown laws and restrictions and all this and all that. But, you know, like, in a way, from your perspective, because we're not professionals on this in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
We don't work in the government and know the ins and outs of like how these lockdowns and how all the stuff actually happened, right? But did that affect the theatre industry at all? Because obviously, like, it's nightclubs that were getting the lockout laws, and after the, you know, the King hits and all these things that were going on, and some of the violence that was happening, which I mean happens everywhere around the world at the same time, but it was just pinpointed in the limelight, and then almost unfair, you know, like
it was hugely unfair. Yeah. A lot of people had their jobs affected that ran bars or nightclubs, and suddenly they couldn't let people in past 1 a.m. Much like extremely strict security in the nightlife in Sydney is something that I've really noticed being in Perth. Like, I feel like Perth is like Sydney, but before all of that happened, which is really funny to like, and I was only freshly 18 when that stuff happened. So I never really got to experience a lot of the Sydney nightlife before the lockout laws hit. The lockout laws have now been reversed, but there's been like irreparable damage on so many small, like, local venues in Sydney, nightlife especially.
But did it affect the theatre industry or anything at all? Because I mean, the theatre's more tame. It's not, you know, dancey nightclub, lasers and lights and stuff.
Yeah, no, theatre shows still went ahead. Theatre shows still went ahead. Shows finish at like 10:30, but I'd say definitely it the whole like culture of nightlife definitely impacted the amount of people going out and doing things. You know, if there aren't bars open for after the theatre show, then your night kind of just ends. Like, I think it definitely affected me and my colleagues when we wanted to, you know, go and do things late at night after work, and we just kind of couldn't. You didn't really have enough time to finish your shift and then go out somewhere before, you know, before being kicked out at midnight or 1 a.m. or whatever, or, you know, service of alcohol became really really strict. So it affected me on a like social level and going out level. The shows weren't really affected because I guess it was still a source of income for the city that wasn't risky in the government's eyes, you know. Exactly, like, people definitely get rowdy at theatre shows, but nothing like, you know, being a nightclub, a neighborhood disturbance or whatever spilling out onto the street. Like, that's just not really what it is.
What way to put it for a house
people
party.
think that like arts and culture is things like theatre shows and concert halls, but, you know, it really also is the community around that, and the demographic of people who are out and about, who see the signs, who see the signage and go out. If you know, can be in a restaurant late at night or go and get food after a theatre show, then maybe it would entice a lot of more people to come. So I feel like the culture of arts in general involves nightclubs for sure. And I feel like because our government was a little more conservative at the time, they just didn't really see that. Didn't really see how having more youths out and about was anything more than a disturbance. So let's shut this down. That's basically what happened. Yeah, and then it's just almost like a revolt for the 18 to like 25-year-olds in a way. They wanted somewhere to go. They wanted something to do, but they didn't want to go to the casino every night. Yeah. But talking about finishing your shift, I've always wondered, so like, what happens? So like, you know, at the moment you're doing the show over here, right? Yeah. Doing Moulin Rouge. But what happens at the beginning before people walk through the door, and what happens at the end when everyone leaves? Like, what's involved with setting it up on the day, and then as soon as the show finishes, what happens? Like,
when everyone leaves, all the audience leaves, do you guys go through like a massive cleanup or something? And
Definitely, especially in this show because there's a lot of confetti.
Okay.
So immediately after the audience is gone, work lights are turned on, pretty lights are turned off. Everybody's out with blowers, like leaf blowers, getting all the confetti off of the front of the stage and into the auditorium to then be cleaned up by like front of house, like cleaners. Cleaners come in every night, like the hours that we aren't there, to clean the whole venue front of house. But back of house, we've kind of got it all already set up day to day. So we did the bump in, you know, a month or two ago, which is ages now. I can't believe it. And so once the actual stage and structure of the show is built, it stays that way overnight. We just we pack up set pieces, turn, you know, power down the lighting system, but not all the way. Day to day, we only kind of send power back to all the lights and like turn them back on again every day, like two hours before the show ish. We get there and we check that every light still works. So that's the process of turning them all on, checking all of their functions one by one, which takes a lot of people quite a lot of time. The people who are in charge of staging and sets and stuff will test all the moving parts of the scenery, the fly system, basically kind of like safety checks, as well as functionally checking that all the electrical equipment works. And then the cast come onto the stage, they warm up. We set for the show, so we get into the right lighting state. We test blackout. We make sure that we can go to blackout and there isn't going to be a random work light on backstage, or so literally all the lights off. So we do. It's called like a blackout check. So we will literally like replicate doing a blackout in the show, because a lot of scene changes and stuff happen in blackout. So it's pretty important for it to be properly dark so we can keep the magic alive. And then we'll set for the pre-show. Music starts. Lights are kind of ballyhooing around the auditorium in a pretty fashion, and then we all rack off, get off of the stage, and then the stage is live. So that's what we call it when the audience is starting to come in. So don't walk on stage with a vacuum cleaner right now because the audience are coming in. So once the stage is live, we all hang around and get ready. All the cast get their microphones tested. We all get onto headsets and check in with the stage manager, so we're all in the know of the show's about to start. And then it's coordinated between the cast, the crew, the band, and the stage manager who's running it all, and we start the show. So that process happens from 2.5 hours, two and a half to 2 hours before 7:30, before the start of a performance. Every day.
And so then, with the roles that are involved, because you've got the lighting crew, you've got the actors. But then, do you have as you said, you put the headsets on? So that's the sound department. The sound department. So then, with the sound department, do you have like a head of the show that is basically like saying, okay, lights go, music go?
So that's like a stage manager. That's what the stage management department does. So we've got many different departments. One that handles like the staging and the scenery. One that handles the lighting, which is what I'm in. Sound department, wardrobe department, wigs department.
Wigs department as well. Okay.
They're called WAM actually. Wigs, hair and makeup. And then we have stage management that are corralling the cast, making sure they're all in the right place at the right time and helping with their safety mainly. And then usually the deputy stage, there'll be like a stage manager who's in charge of running the backstage and making sure that everybody's safe and making sure largely the cast is safe. And then the deputy stage manager will normally be the person who sits at a kind of console of their own with queuing lights for queuing people, and microphone they can click on and off, and a score of the whole show. They have a camera that has the conductor monitor on it, so they can cue lights based on the downbeats of the conductor.
Oh wow! Okay.
And they'll have lots of cameras too, like an infrared camera, and like a zooming camera that they can check for like scene changes and stuff.
Wow.
They basically need to be like eagle eyes on everything happening at once. Making sure that they're automated. So there's like somebody who sits at a desk and operates like, you know, pieces of scenery that move on their own instead of being pushed, like automated. So the stage manager will be specifically looking at infrared cameras in scene changes to make sure that the crew and the cast are safe and out of the way of things that are moving, things that are being flown in and out. And yeah, they're the ones cueing. So they'll have a point in the music where they know that the flyers need to come in and the lights need to change and the set needs to move. But they won't call that go until they know it's safe to do so. So they're always watching.
So then with all of this, right, because like an infrared camera is very expensive, right?
Yes, very expensive.
Very expensive. So then with, say, like Moulin Rouge or Carmen or all these different shows and stuff like that, because you know how they travel all around the world, right?
Yeah.
Well, so like Moulin Rouge would travel all around the world, or Hugh Jackman's Greatest Showman and stuff like that. They go to Europe and the whole lot, right?
Yeah.
So with that, do they take equipment everywhere they go to the different show, or do they, like, say, like Perth? Did Perth have some of the equipment that you already had, so you didn't need to fly some of it over, or?
It's a really good question for sure. So
yeah.
So on the productions I've worked on that have just done Australian tours, the set and all of the lighting equipment and all of the sound equipment are all contracted and hired.
Okay.
They're like hired from a company and they're freighted across the country in big trucks.
Do you ever, like, does stuff ever get misplaced at all?
Stuff gets misplaced for sure. Stuff gets misplaced. Stuff gets broken. You know, the logistics of, you know, having a list of all the equipment that putting on a show of this scale, like the amount of pre-production work that gets put into it, and like pre-rigging. So like, pre-production. The amount of planning is just like mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Everything has to. There are specific, you know, truck packs. So kind of like roadies would unload and load trucks at each leg of a concert tour. They would have the same road cases and the same equipment that they tour city to city. So we do the same thing.
Yeah.
And we've got the set that's all custom built and all breaks up into many different pieces. It's all had to be really thought about how to like travel it all safely. There are big like flat packs where all the props, you know, chairs and cabinets and all sorts of small individual handheld props have to be carefully like wrapped up and looked after so they can be chartered across the country safely.
Yeah.
And you know, there are things that get that, you know, accidentally fall over or get bumped. Obviously we try and plan it to be all strapped down and all perfectly looked after, but we're sometimes we're transporting really like delicate equipment, you know. It's not just like a big lighting rig for a concert. It's that plus all of the specific cameras and set electrics. So we have like big set pieces that will have really small, you know, intricate lighting within them. You know, things that light up. I feel like almost everything in our show lights up.
Well, it's very red.
So, you know, we've got this huge neon sign, for instance, that says Moulin Rouge there. That's a real neon sign. Yeah. So it's actually glass. Each of the letters are glass tubes. They break up into a few pieces each, and it has real neon gas running through it, which is wildly, wildly expensive.
Yeah,
and it's custom made, of course, as well. It's super heavy. The frame that it's on is red steel. So it's super heavy and it's super fragile. And we've had bits of the glass break before, and it's been, you know, cost the company a few thousands of dollars to get parts of it replaced. So yeah, the logistics of touring something that's so pretty and so delicate and intricate and custom, you know, like you can't just get an elephant from anywhere.
That's exactly
It's a big ordeal. So yeah, it's not kind of like a normal concert pack or a DJ setup in which everything comes in its own foam padded box.
Yeah, that's
we're kind of making that
as you go
travel thing up.
So talking about things potentially going wrong, right, and like costing the company, like, you know, thousands of dollars. Have you ever had anything go wrong live whilst a show is happening?
Of course.
Have you ever had any things where it's like maybe like an act trips over or anything like that?
Actors tripping over, that happens all the time.
Really?
That's no sweat off. Well, I mean, probably sweat off of the actor's back as long as they're okay.
Though,
totally, yeah. We have an in-house physio that sees cast and crew for like maintenance of injuries sustained at work. Like, it's a very physical job for the crew, pushing things, picking things up, twisting in awkward positions, making things, you know, work. It's not the most ergonomic sometimes being a follow spot operator or being a flyman, but also the cast, of course, they're doing, an incredible amount of physical.
Yeah. Whether it be ballet or like theater, like jumping around, like
Tap dancing, they're doing acrobatic work, like doing the can, getting your legs above your head in high kicks is like no small task. And so they have they have a team of dance captains and choreographers and the director and everybody that works really closely with them to make sure that they're safe while also doing this amazing dance every night. And we have, swings and covers and stuff to jump in and stand in when stuff like that happens as well. But in terms of like logistically, the show stops. Hopefully, like the show goes on all the way through and we get through it, and we mostly do most nights. But every show I've worked on, occasionally we have to stop.
Really?
Yeah. Either something's faltered in the set or a scene change wasn't ready in time and, we need to just like hold for a little bit to make sure that everybody's safe and everybody knows what's going on. And because things are very, intricately timed. So when something does stop, you don't just want to like wait till it works and then keep going because somebody might have already entered when they shouldn't have been, and they might be suddenly in the way of something that they're not usually. You know what I mean? So it's a delicate dance. So for safety reasons, usually, if anything like that happens and we can't exactly predict that everybody's going to be completely safe going forward, we'll just stop and we'll let everybody know what's going on. And that's the stage manager's job as well. They will call what's called a show stop. So they can be short enough that we just pause for a little bit, stay in the same lighting state, make sure that everybody on headsets and everybody who's not gets, spoken to backstage to check that everybody's okay and aware of where we're starting again from and everything. And then the stage manager will cue the conductor again and the conductor will cue the band and we'll start up from where we stopped without really much the audience may not even really realize that it wasn't supposed to happen. It kind of happens so smoothly, hopefully, that no sweat off anyone's back, and we just keep going. Everybody's safe and happy, and we keep going with the show as normal.
There would be no notification like saying there's an intermission or, sorry folks, there wouldn't be anything like usually. Ideally,
no, we wouldn't have to actually stop the show. We would just hold, and then we would continue. Okay. But if something is going to take a little longer, like maybe a certain system has to be reset or somebody has to, go get a new pair of pants because they've ripped. Things take time sometimes.
That's it,
or we need to just like stop, take stock, make sure everybody's safe and maybe go back to a different part, like to, a few bars earlier because that's a better spot to pick up from. It'll take, time for us to reset. We will, the stage manager will get a live mic. They will ask the sound department for a live mic. And they will announce to the audience, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We had to stop the show, but we'll be starting again shortly, stuff like that. Yeah. So, a good team and a good stage manager, that's a day-to-day part of the job. It doesn't happen every day, but that's something you have to be ready to work with at any given point. You kind of can't just take for granted that everything's going to run smoothly. Sometimes things happen and it's live theatre. I think that's what makes it really cool. Yeah. And the kind of, you really earn your money when you're in that kind of high pressure situation where you have to think on your feet, you have to problem solve, but you have to do it calmly and safely. That's what makes it cool, It's not just like watching a movie, you press play and it's just going to work the same every time. Yeah. Sometimes there are a million different scenarios that might happen in theatre that mean we have to stop or hold. But that's kind of what makes it fun. I feel like I've had more fun at theatre shows where there's been a show stop and I go, ooh,
that's what I mean.
Wonder how they're going to handle this, you know? It's fun, it's dynamic, and that's it's a cool part of it.
It could be like a heart-pounding moment as well. It's like one of the lead actors has just fallen over. You're like, okay, what's going on?
Sure.
Show stop. How's it going to pick up? The whole lot.
And and that is where it really becomes clear that everybody's job's really important.
Yeah.
Like an actor getting back on stage in the right amount of time, having done a lightning fast quick change off stage. If one of their dresses wasn't there in time or wasn't ready or fumbled with a zip even, it could mean that the next scene the scene change doesn't work because it needs to all be timed like that. Yeah. That in those situations, you really realize how important everybody is, even though there are so many people doing a very small job on this big thing,
amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing how it all comes together.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, so
cool.
we've got maybe 15, 20 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask that, so where do you see yourself going in this industry? Because you didn't plan to go into it.
Yeah.
But now you're in it and you love it. But then, where do you want to be a stage manager one day? Or
I think I definitely, I've been I've, been a stage manager on a very small show. On something of this scale, it's a very different job. Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe I'd like to try. I'll have done some kind of props, and I've done a bit of like stage management, but like assistant stage managing. I feel like that kind of vibe is what I'd like to explore more, being a little more involved with, the cast and the kind of small scale intricacies, the kind of attention to detail. I really like that kind of stuff, so I'm curious to do that. I don't know if stage managing would really be my vibe. It's so much like people managing. That's basically what it is. And that is where it really comes into play, where you need to know people's strengths and weaknesses and how to make a bunch of different kinds of people get along. That is a large part of what stage managing is. So to me, that kind of still seems pretty daunting, but who knows, maybe if I work in, the industry for long enough, it'll become something that seems seems easy, or seems like something I want to take on. But yeah, I don't know. I feel really lucky that I am a freelancer and I get to kind of pick. I can, roll on to the next show if I want in the same role as what I'm doing now, or I can apply for a job in a completely different department and hope that somebody will take me on and mentor me just the same way as, they did 6 years ago.
Would you say that your life now is going to be involved in the theatre and the arts? Like, can you see yourself deviating and potentially getting out of it at any point in your life? Or definitely.
I think like the conversation we were having earlier about like COVID and stuff, it really gave people an idea of the world that is outside of theatre, and because I've kind of done it since I was freshly 18, I've never had a weekend off.
Yeah.
Mondays have been my only day off. My whole work
just Monday
life.
Yeah.
I've never had a weekend. I've never finished work at 5 p.m. and had dinner with friends. That's never been something that I've gotten to do. So I think I can definitely see myself. I have a much more realistic perspective on how this kind of a job can burn you out, and how locking yourself into doing 8 shows a week, every week for years and years and years, maybe isn't the most sustainable. I've seen, my parents manage it and ended up and, deviate themselves and come back to it sometimes. And they definitely, didn't end up sustaining like having the family plus both being on tour. Just it kind of doesn't work.
Yeah.
But then I, do also work with people now who have kids and either bring them on the road or have a partner who comes and stays in the accommodation for a few weeks at a time, does the kind of like touring with a family thing or touring with pets thing. Like I have a friend who's brought her dogs here. I don't know, you can kind of make the industry work for you. So if there were ever things that I thought I needed to adjust, or like if I wanted to take a swing position in which I wasn't doing all 8 shows a week, I was just doing maybe 4, and then I would go to uni or to TAFE or to wherever else I wanted to go, or maybe get a, like people call it, like a real person job, get a real job, and go and try something else completely different. I would then hopefully still have the foundation of the network here to be able to come back and do a short season. Maybe I'd do like 1 short season a year, or work in theatre for half of the year and then do something else for the other half of the year. I kind of have that flexibility.
Yeah.
The flexibility thing is really great as long as you can afford to not have the job security. So I think now, being like 24, I still, really don't have a lot of dependents. I've moved out of my place in Sydney. I don't currently have rent that I'm paying. I'm just living on tour. So it kind of suits me now in being at the kind of age where I still want to try new things and like maybe go overseas again and blah, blah, blah. But if I ever wanted to like settle down and put roots down somewhere, maybe I would want to balance, life with work a little better. So I don't know.
That's a good way to put it though, because it's like just going with the flow and having fun whilst you can.
Yeah. Just making it up is really what I've always done. So
but then
I plan on continuing.
Being aware that, potentially when you, like, say I'm 30 now. And so, like, for me, it's like I was just a full-time DJ, and then COVID was a wake-up call.
Yeah.
But now I have a day job. And I have the day job where that is my career. But at the same time, the music will always be my passion, my hobby, my everything. But it's still being able to balance both of them. And that's the way to do it, because you don't want to just go and get a real job and then forget about all the fun things you did.
Totally.
And all the adventures and all the excitement and everything you've managed and the things you've learned as well. Like, because as you said that right at the beginning, it's always you're always learning new things about the industry. You never know where it could take you.
Yeah, and there are definitely jobs I could get that do have more traditional hours.
Yeah.
while also being in the industry. And that, you know, like working in obviously film or TV or doing 8 shows a week is a very extreme schedule to have. But, you know, there are jobs you can do working in production offices that are more officey jobs, but still in the realm of the entertainment industry. I feel like those kind of jobs are even less known about. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it.
Or, you know, working on Play School. They film that during the daytimes, right? Because there are kids in it. So, like, that's got to be a day job, right?
That's exactly it. So we might see you on Play School in the near future.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And then you'll be networking, getting your kids involved with it as well.
Yeah, this is really broad. Like, the industry has a hugely broad scope.
That's what.
So I feel confident that I'll be able to make it work for whatever stage of life I'm in, while also being able to be in the creative industries for sure.
But see, that's where it's been amazing talking to you. Honestly, it's been so good talking to you because, you know, like I kind of said right at the beginning, it's like, you know, a normal job. It's like being an accountant, a lawyer, doing this or doing that. But there are so many different things you can do within entertainment, nightlife, hospitality, arts, culture, the whole lot.
Yeah.
The fact that it's like, you know, you're on the road. You're having the time of your life traveling around Australia, but then being able to, as I said, be aware to be able to go, well, there are other options that are classed as normal jobs, even though what we're doing right now, like what I'm doing is a normal job, what you're doing is a normal job, but then being able to have the more stability and be, you know, be able to take leave and be classed as full time. And
that's true. Yeah, and I've been really lucky to be employed full time. Recently, like there are definitely a lot of jobs in entertainment that are strictly casual, and you kind of feel very locked into a really hectic schedule. Same in hospitality. But being able to be full time and have that leave, you're right. It's something that makes it feel like more of a normal job, more of a real life job where I can balance time off with also working. It's not just a passion hobby that I have to sacrifice every other kind of schedule for. It's becoming a little more easy to manage, which is good. Yeah.
Sounds like you're living life to the absolute max at the moment, honestly.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Thank you so much for coming on, though.
Thanks for having me.
Like, this has been honestly such an eye-opener.
Yay.
And it's been great, though. Like, I'm glad I bumped into you at whatever pub that was and, like, managed to actually convince you to come on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. It's been really fun.
So hopefully, you know, next time you're in Perth, because obviously you're based in Sydney, you know, next time you're in Perth, you can come back on and we can hang out again.
Talk about Play School.
Yeah, that's it. Talk about Play School and talk about all the other little nitty-gritty fun parts of, you know, theatre and everything else.
Yeah, cool.
So, all right. Well, thank you very much. And then, so, Beth, could you press... I think the button is 2. It's just like it should go to a black screen. So we'll see you guys later on, right? And then we'll be back next week for another episode where I'm pretty sure I've got a guy called Bromad coming on. And so I don't actually know his real name. I just know him as DJ Bromad.
We've got an hour to figure it out, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
But then with Bromad, there's a thing called Beatport. And Beatport is kind of like the iTunes charts for electronic music. And so with that, he's actually hit #1 and #2 on dubstep and drum bass around the whole entire world. Wow. And he's from Perth.
Wow, cool.
So it's like he's managed to hit #1 ahead of all the other electronic musicians in the world. And it's, you know, I'm going to talk to him about how that happened. So so stay tuned and I'll see you next week for that. Awesome. Thank you very much. And then, yeah.
Thanks.
We'll see you guys soon. Gotcha. There you go.